come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to 81 All Out Podcast. This is Mahesh, your host for today's show. Unfortunately, the captain of the ship, Siddhartha, couldn't make it today. We'll miss him. But we got the rest of the crew here for talking about India's historic test win at the Oval. It's come a good 50 years after the first historic win at the Oval. Quite ironically, that one was primarily driven by the spinners. And this time, in fact, the absence of India's best spinner is one of the biggest topics going into the test. But it didn't matter. Eventually, they won a significant test. And this is the second time they won two tests in a series in England. Of course, this is a 5-test series, whereas the last time they did that in 1986 was actually a 3-test series. Whichever way you look at it, it's a historic win for India. To talk about it, we've got Ashoka Rao, AB Van on Twitter with us. Hi, Ashoka.
Van. Hello.
And the prince among cricket literate analysts. Did I get that right? Ajinkya Rahane at Cricketing View on Twitter.
I'm not sure. I think it was data literate, not cricket literate.
Oh, sorry, data literate.
Everyone is cricket literate.
Oh, everyone is cricket literate. Anyway, so let's get started with Ashoka, who seems to have got so many predictions spot on. So, Ashoka.
Yeah, I mean, before all that, you said this was a test series. I take objection to that. I mean, we are in a woke era. I think we should call it what it is. I would call it an active crime scene because 4 tests down, I think Indian team is still breaking the law by not having Ashwin in. So this is an active crime scene. And I think at some point, British government should extradite these players back to India and have them face the law. To be very fair, right? I also blame Ashwin for this, for being a perpetrator of a crime against himself, right? I mean, he's not bowling a ball when some random guy called Jarvo is getting into the field and trying to bowl balls. I think Ashwin should try to bowl a couple of balls as well. I mean, if he's not willing to do that, which means that he's breaking the law himself. So I'm not seeing any arrests as of now. So that is kind of disappointing. But consolation is that Shardul is doing everything, right? Like he's being the Lord, which, I mean, takes literally no effort. And he's bowling, he's batting, he's flying here, there. He's controlling the weather. There was not a single drop of rain. So that's the consolation. Win was obvious because when they picked Shardul, it was done. England knew that, India knew that. Other than that, it's a pretty sad set of events. I mean, a lot of people on Twitter are angrily demanding somebody's head, and I am with them 100% of the way.
Okay, shots fired. Kartikeya, let's address the big elephant in the room first. I mean, you've been addressing it forever, but just one more time for us.
Which elephant now are we talking about? There are so many.
The crime against humanity. How can they not pick Ashwin 11?
But it has done Ashwin no harm, man. I mean, without bowling a ball, Ashwin's reputation has burgeoned in the last 5 test matches. And he's gone from being a very, very, very good off spinner to being a demon bowler. You know, it's all been good for him. No, but
actually, no. I think this is the other way. I think it won't stop until they build another temple. We are a temple building nation. I think they'll build a temple for him. And I think given the weather and the forecast and whatnot, I don't think he's going to be picked for the 5th test as well. So there is going to be another 1 more week of outrage and crying.
Yeah. Yesterday, one guy was saying that, if they had picked Ashwin at the Oval, India would have won in 4 days. So they shouldn't pick Ashwin. They shouldn't pick Ashwin for Trent Bridge also. Then India will win in, then if you can say that if they pick Ashwin for Trent Bridge, India would have won there in 3 days. You know, it's like.
I think that claim has some validity because, they picked Ashwin for the World Test Championship final and New Zealand straight away gave the walkover. But, the Indian team being the generous team that they are, they made a match out of it and finally graciously lost to New Zealand. But that claim seems to have some truth to it.
Yeah,
I mean, including Ashwin seems to be the cure for even everything. They are even looking at it, FDA approvals are being sought because if you include Ashwin in the team, probably it can cure Corona, apparently. That's what I heard. I don't know. I'm just hearing and I'm just reporting facts.
Yeah, there are seriously people saying that, basically people seem to think Ashwin is going to run through batting lineups on shirt fronts. It's not going to happen, you know.
I mean, I understand the extremes. Just slightly on a serious note here, I understand the extremes. Especially when a really great player is not playing. Like you said, it's very easy for his reputation to get enhanced rather than diminished because he's not playing. But having said that, leave aside the extremes, and you leave aside the outrage sort of tone of talking about it. But it is a serious conversation to have. It is not outrageous to suggest that India should have picked Ashwin, and especially in this test, in the previous test, for example, I've always been making a case that Ashwin should be playing ahead of the fourth seamer. And that's okay. That's just, let's say, my way of looking at it. And of course, equally legitimate, if not more legitimate, is what the team management went ahead with it, particularly given the conditions. But coming into this test, there are a couple of things to look at. One is that it's a novel test. You could argue that the wicket on the first day looked not so typical of an oval test, which is understandable, and in many ways that dictated the kind of bowlers that both the teams chose. But the only catch here is that India did not have their two of their first three choices when it comes to seamers. Right, Ishant was not available, Shami was not available, and India had to go with Umesh, who himself is a bit of an unknown in England, and whose record away from India is not outstanding, and not just in terms of average, but even in terms of economy rate. He goes at like 4 and over when he plays away from India. So that in itself is a bit of a gamble. But it's worth it because Umesh gives you that potency as well when he bowls well. And then you have Shardul on top of it, who, whatever little we have seen of him, is that the guy... there is something about him. He brings extraordinary amount of fortune with him as well, apart from the skills that he brings forth. But it wouldn't be unfair to say that he's a wayward bowler. So you got Umesh, who's coming back after a break, whose record away from home is not particularly great. You got Shardul, who's a bit of a wayward bowler. Siraj, who's been quite an all-out attacking bowler throughout the series. So if you look at control, you got Bumrah and you got Jadeja, right? Those are the two bowlers who are going to give you control. In a way, it's a big gamble, right?
Well, yes and no, but it's also that on these wickets, a decent fast bowler is a better bet than a decent finger spinner. And that's the bias. I mean, it's not that if you have a flat wicket, the spinner is going to do better than the seamer. He's not. We've always thought that in India, but that's not true, right? I mean, if that was really the case, India would have a far better record in all these conditions, because playing two spinners or one spinner or whatever, three spinners would be far more common, but it's not. So if on this wicket, I don't think it's close. I mean, do you play four fast? If you want to play four fast bowlers, then if you have four fast bowlers to play, then you play them, I think. Unless you have like Vaughan or a wrist spinner or somebody, who can turn the ball hard on a day one pitch or something like that. Then okay, I can understand. But even there, I don't think they would play Vaughan and McGill on this wicket. They would probably play Vaughan and three fast bowlers in Australia. So, could you play Ashwin? Yeah, you could, but I think that there's a point to playing four fast bowlers, and in this series, it's been shown that it's a good idea.
No, that is true if you have the first four choices available. But with Umesh and Shardul as the third and fourth choices, you used a couple of words over there. One is a decent seamer versus a decent spinner, but it's not.
Yeah, but Umesh Yadav is a decent fast bowler. He has 150 test wickets at 30. Just for comparison, Brett Lee has 300 test wickets at 30. I think we underestimate what a decent fast bowler is. And Umesh Yadav is better than the fast bowlers we used to have 15 years ago. because he, as he showed today, as he shows in India all the time, he can bowl to a plan, and he can deliver, a spell to a plan, whether it's a restrictive plan or an attacking plan, or whether it's bouncers or whatever. He can do all of those things, So
No, that's true. But just like how we're talking about Ashwin, right? When you're talking about Ashwin, we're not talking about his overall record. We're talking about how he'll fit into this specific context. Shouldn't the same logic apply to Umesh? It's not like Umesh's overall record is a good indication of how he's going to perform outside India, because a lot of the good sort of part of the record comes from his playing in India.
The point is not I'm not arguing that picking Ashwin is worse than picking Umesh Yadav. I'm just saying they are equally reasonable. So if they pick that, I don't see what the objection is. I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable selection.
No, I agree with the politics of your point. I am not going to say...
No, it's not a political point. It's just a simple point of cricket logic. It's like you have two equal options. They pick one. I mean, I have no problem which one they pick. They can pick whichever. I'll defend it.
No, but that's where the question is. For instance, if you pick Ishant over Ashwin in the first test, that is a fair argument. Like, not two reasonably equal alternatives. But if it comes to Umesh and Ashwin,
in these conditions, Ishant Sharma is a vastly superior alternative to any finger spinner. I mean, I think in these conditions, basically, England would much rather face Muralidharan than they would face Ishant Sharma.
No, that's a fair point. Let's say Shardul, for instance, earlier. In this case, Shardul. Umesh is
Shardul is basically a batsman, man.
Come on, it's not
also,
like
as Ashoka would say, Shardul is basically God. So,
Yeah, it is unknowable what it is. But to add to Mahesh's point, the day one before, on the task when Kohli said that they have got left-handers, so Jadeja will be useful and all that. During that point, I felt it is not unreasonable to expect Ashwin to be part of the 11. That's all I felt.
No, it is not. I agree.
Yeah, that's all. That's the more in this test than in the other three. In the other three is just me being Ashwin fan. But I thought this test, at least when we have a precedence in this pitch being conducive to spin, and the forecast being what it is, for what it's worth, we were not going to expect any rain. And how the test played out, I thought, it was reasonable to expect Ashwin to be part of the 11. Other than that, I don't have much of a problem. I would still, because I am biased and I am a fan of Ashwin's bowling, I would still say that he should play every test.
But also, it's not the point, right? I also like watching Ashwin, but that's not the point. The point is, they made a selection. Is it reasonable? Answer is yes. End of story, as far as I'm concerned. If they had picked 2 spinners and 3 fast bowlers for all the 4 tests, that would also have been reasonable. It's not like it's not like these are vastly different choices. It's just how they want to play, and that's perfectly legitimate. Why shouldn't they get to decide how they want to play?
No, of course they get to decide, but it is just wondering what's, like, for instance, how is this choice of not picking Ashwin in this test when 2 of your frontline seamers are not available? How can we make sense of it the same way we did in the first, let's say, 3 tests, where of course the choices were different, right? And it's fair to say they were superior compared to Umesh and Shardul.
I think they saw the wicket on the first morning and they decided they had to play 4 fast bowlers. That's basically it. And basically, and what the giveaway was that, Root decided to bowl after winning the toss, and Kohli said he would have bowled if he had won the toss. So clearly they thought that, the first day was the time to bowl. And if that was the case, then they had to have 4 fast bowlers. Because you can't send the opposition in and then bowl a spinner for a second change.
No, that's true. I think the first day wicket, in fact, I want to extend on that point on the first day wicket. One is that in many ways, I think Karthik Krishnaswamy mentioned this on Twitter, that it seems like not a typical wicket. It's doctored specifically for suiting the home team against India, which, none of us are going to complain about it here. But in a way, it also backfired for England, right? In the sense that the reason why Root chose to bowl first was because of the way the wicket was on the first day. And unlike what was there, let's say, at Lord's or Headingley, it was never going to last that long. It's because the fundamental nature of the whole wicket is different. And it was always going to, I mean, you can't say always, but it was likely that it was going to peter out to a flattish sort of wicket later on. In some ways, you could argue that it backfired on Root. But the more critical thing is that, India got the worst of the conditions to bat up front, and they nearly paid the price for it. To come back and win from that kind of a situation is it is just an incredible win.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. I don't know that it backfired on Root. I don't think they had a choice. They have to prepare green wickets because they have one out and out fast bowler, Mark Wood. Everybody else they have is a seamer, and once the wicket flattens out, this seamers are, not as effective. And they haven't got anybody like Jadeja or Ashwin. So, you saw, Moeen is not able to control his length. He keeps dropping short or over pitching every over. So, he can't keep the runs down. And they didn't pick Leach in the squad, I think, for the fourth test, if I'm not wrong. So they didn't have too many options. I mean, the fact that they didn't pick Leach in the squad for the fourth test suggests to me that the wicket was prepared by design, which is fine. You would expect no less. But it's like, if we say that, this thing backfired on England, it would suggest that they had an alternative choice and they didn't. There's only one way that they can beat India right now, which is to prepare a seamer and hope that Robinson and Anderson will get them enough wickets cheaply to put them ahead in the game. And it worked at Headingley, but it had not worked at Lord's, and it didn't work here. So, basically what it shows is that India are better than England right now, because they're playing away from home and they are getting the worst of the conditions because, of course, Kohli cannot win a toss to save his life. And even after he wins the toss, he makes a horrible decision like he did at Headingley. But even then, they are able to not only compete, but they're able to stay in the game, and then they are able to win in the end. They're over 5 days, they are able to outlast England, which suggests to me that India are just the better side right now. And given that they have one hopelessly out of form batsman, that's quite an achievement.
Did you just say that the captain made an outrageous decision?
No.
You said it. Kohli doesn't win the toss, and he won the toss and he made an outrageous decision.
No, he said horrible decision.
Horrible decision, whatever.
Yeah.
But in spirit, it's the same.
He has no practice in doing things after winning the toss. How is he going to be good at it? He never wins the toss.
But I thought you would argue even that was, it was, to be honest, I would think that was a reasonable decision. I thought you would say the same as well.
Yeah, it's like, who knows how these wickets are going to behave, yeah? It did a lot on that first day. And to be fair, I think Ollie Robinson bowled really well. So I think basically, Headingley, they got caught out, but at Lord's, look, England have been in a position to catch India out in 3 consecutive test matches. And basically they've failed all 3 times. And the 4th time it was the other way around, where India were in a position to catch England out at Trent Bridge. And I don't think England did well enough to catch India out. They're chasing only 200 in the 4th innings, and I think they would have won there. They would have chased 200.
So, Ashoka, the floor is yours now. Let's talk about the first innings where India were in deep trouble, and it looked like it was a repetition of what we saw at Headingley, except that that one man decided to, should we even call him a man? Except that the Lord decided to change the script. And more importantly, you seem to have predicted that script.
Yeah, and before all that, did you see Jadeja at number 5? India seemed to have taken the hint that Rahane is not working anymore. He is out of form, and therefore But I think if you are going that way, I think you might have as well dropped Rahane and bought Ashwin. That was the other half of the argument that I made, and people only seem to remember the first half. The second half was thrown away. But yeah, so
I think it takes time, right? It takes time. I think two of them came true in this test. Perhaps next test they'll do it.
Yeah.
I think Shastri is listening.
Now he has COVID, man. He has nothing else to do. He has to either Zoom or listen to this podcast. So, anyways, so fantastic innings, I thought. For some reason, it was forced because 127 for 7. What the hell is he going to do? He's not going to, face 300 balls for 50 runs. I don't think has the game for that. But the shots that he played somehow were okay, man. I didn't. There was a distinct difference between the shots that he played and the shots Shami and Bumrah played in the second test. So there is batting capability, and it came off. I mean, whatever it did, that straight drive. Did you see the straight drive? Fantastic. And a couple of cover drives as well, and hook, whatnot. He did everything, and everything came off. So the man is walking on water. He's literally Jesus.
Come on,
so,
Ashoka, it's not a straight drive or a cover drive. It's the same drive. It's just aimed in different directions.
It's what Shane once said of Monty Python, right? Like he didn't play 32 tests. He played the same test 32 times. So
but okay, man, if you have got one good shot and you play it in every direction, you're basically Superman.
Shardul's first miracle was to bring good weather with him, and he walked into bad and the sun came out.
Yeah, that's another thing, though. I mean, whenever the sun used to come out, English bowling seemed to have lost all potency.
No, it's one thing for us. I mean, how? I mean, Karthikeya, you are the one who looks at the control percentages quite a lot, and the law of averages and lots of law of averages catching up and so on. This guy has played 66 first-class games, and his average is less than 18. And he comes to Test cricket, and he's already played 3 significant innings in such a short career. It is it is an extraordinary outlier. But apart from that, do you see anything else? Apart from the fact that it is an extraordinary outlier?
No. I mean, he knows exactly what he's capable of and what he wants to do. He doesn't try to play defense. He doesn't try to block. He doesn't try to keep his wicket or anything like that. There are shots he can play, and he plays them at every opportunity. It's not always going to work. In the last time he played, it didn't work. But I think Lords, he got out cheaply the first time. And Trent Bridge, he got out cheaply in the first innings. Second innings, he didn't get a hit. So, I mean, he's having a good beginning, but I mean, I would be surprised if it's sustained. It's like Sam Curran had a great beginning in 2018 against India, and since then the averages have caught up with him. So I would not be surprised if that happens to Shardul Thakur. But the point is, India are not really playing outside Asia that much in the near future, except for one South African series. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, when he'll get a chance to play next, because I don't think he'll play in India. When, they only play 2 fast bowlers in India most of the time. Sometimes they play 3, and I don't see them, like if Shami and Ishant are fit, I don't see Shardul Thakur being picked ahead of those 3.
We are talking as if we know everything, man. He's the Lord. He will be India's number 6, and then he will be the permanent all-rounder, and he will kick both Jadeja and Ashwin and Hardik and Krunal and everybody out. So we never know with what he's going to do. And he may be extremely successful and frustrate, all your statisticians and people who go through stats and tell who's a good player and who's not. He's going to be an all-time great. Just like I said, Liam Livingstone is going to be an all-time great. This one is going to be.
Now we are dealing with double Lords here. Then there is the Shardul Lord, and then there's your prediction Lord. It's like we can't take it on.
Right about now, Marvel is doing a What If series on Hotstar, where they say what happens in parallel universe. I think in one of those universes, Shardul is kind of the god of cricket. He has racked up 10,000 runs and taken 500 wickets. And people are talking about him and not Sobus. Sobus is forgotten. So
The one thing to be said is that I think we are really deeply obsessed with this whole business of who's getting a chance and who deserves to play. As if a spot in the test team is a prize. It's not a prize; it's a job. I mean, and some of them play and some of them don't play. And India is so good right now that every test match they play, there are 2 or 3 players who should be playing who don't get to play. I mean, I can imagine a perfectly good Indian 11 which would beat England in England, which doesn't have Kohli in it. They could easily field a 11 which doesn't have Kohli in it and beat.
He did beat Australia with no Kohli in it.
With no Kohli, exactly. So there is no. I mean, there are so many good combinations that they can pick from this squad. Because they have so many bowling options, first of all, so that keeps them in a game in most kinds of conditions. Spinning conditions, of course, they are always going to be in the game, and even seam bowling conditions, they are always in the game. And in these sort of in between conditions where the wicket is flat, they are still in the game because they've got Bumrah. So, and then I tend to think that if you take the best 8 or 9 batsmen in India, you pick any 5 of them, and you can cobble together a decent batting lineup to compete in a test match anywhere in the world. So that I don't necessarily think that any of the batsmen are irreplaceable. So I'm not that exercised about selection, and I tend to generally defend any selection they make, because I think the question is, when it comes to selection, the question is, well, they have picked a side. Why might they have done so? And what is the cricket story in that selection? That I find very interesting. So I try to think of that.
Maybe that is the ideal state of a all-conquering test teams. Combinations and personalities don't matter. The team has enough depth and enough variety that any combination of 5 batsmen, 5 bowler, and a keeper would work in any condition. I mean, that should be the ideal test team. That's what we are building towards. And that's kind of horrible for India, right? Because we are a personality cult-driven country. For us, who matters more than what?
It is horrible in 2 ways. One is that we as a society are obsessed about individual achievement. But 2, we also have the largest base of cricketers. And, it is terribly unfair for a lot of the second rung sort of players to miss out on a substantial test career just because they happen to be in India. And it's not like a club thing where you can easily move around, right? I mean, unless, there are a bunch of players who moved to England and played like that. But even that gestation period is simply too long. So in many ways, it's also terribly unfair. Like someone like Hanuma Vihari can walk into most teams, lineup. Like Riddhiman Saha can walk into any team. Between Ashwin and Jadeja, whenever they're not playing, they can walk into any other team. So in a way, it's also terribly unfair on some really high quality players.
Yeah, I mean it is an inescapable fact of being a good side that the selection of the 11 is sort of by definition unfair in any good team. Because a good team has more than 11 players who could win you the game in any conditions. But for example, you remember when in December and January when Kohli had to go away and that 36 all out and all that, and then Rahane comes, and there's a whole sort of school of commentary in India which went, oh yeah, Rahane's calm, this, that, Rahane stamped his personality on the team and that's why they won, and it's good that Kohli was good riddance to Kohli, and for a long time Kohli and Shastri were like the gruesome twosome, and now Kohli is back, and now suddenly Kohli has stamped his authority on the team. Like, how it cannot be both, no? Either, or neither of them are stamping their authority on anything. It really doesn't matter who's captain and who's vice captain and what they're doing, because as it is, what they have to do is worked out in plans in the meeting with what the analyst and the coach and all that, and that's how they work things out. So, and that's what they do on the field. It's not like they're making stuff up as they go along when they're in the field. So,
in fact, today in your piece, the piece that you wrote about the match, Karthikeya wrote a line which was quite impressive, and I mean, like especially for Indian fans, which was also very, what do you say, in a way unrelatable for us, because there's a line where he says that the captain today is not just hoping that his bowlers bowl to the plan; he expects them to. And that is a massive change. That explains everything you need to know about where Indian cricket is today compared to where it was even, let's say, 7-8 years back.
Yeah, I mean, what you see Shardul Thakur, right? I saw this. I noticed this in the first innings when they lost the 5 early wickets, mainly thanks to Jasprit Bumrah taking 2 in 1 over with the new ball. And I think there was 60, 65 for 5 or something like that. And then Pope and Bairstow had a century, almost actually exact century stand, I think. And at some point, the India were sort of bowling, Siraj and Umesh and then Shardul. And then I think Shardul Thakur went for 4 fours in an over to Bairstow. And he was bowling straight. I mean, that it was not bad bowling. It was basically, he was attacking the stumps and he had a mid-wicket and a mid-on. And, he was basically trying to get a wicket, by attacking Bairstow stumps. And it wasn't working. And he immediately changed his line. He moved his line to outside off stump. And I think his next 3 overs went for 1 each. That doesn't just happen. He's not thinking on his feet. He knows that the fallback plan is to sit back, and the field is changed accordingly. And, they just know, everybody knows what the plan is. That's what it should be like in good teams. That's why, you remember Ashoka and Mahesh, Colin Miller, the guy with the blue hair.
Yeah, the funky Miller.
Who used to play for Australia.
Yep.
He was like an average bowler. But when he bowled for Australia, those 20 years ago, he looked really good. He was not hard. He was hard to hit, and he was not like he could bowl off breaks and seam up, and neither of them particularly well, but he was effective. But that's because there was a plan for what he was supposed to do and what he was supposed to achieve, and he achieved that. Basically, I think the difference between the 20 years ago, what they did 20 years ago and what they do now is that when you watch India play now, you know exactly where they're trying to get a wicket. And as a corollary, when they are not bowling well, you immediately know that as well. You can see it within like 4 or 5 balls, like within like 2 overs, 1 from each end, you can tell, that, this is not, they're not bowling their usual way. There's something has gone wrong and they're chasing a wicket everywhere. And that never works. That almost never works. You end up going for a lot of runs that way. But most of the time, where they're trying to get a wicket. So, and it's not like they try like very sophisticated plans or anything like that. There are basically 3 plans that they try. The one is the usual plan A, which is to attack the 4th stump line and keep 3 or 4 slips. The second is to bowl straight and keep 2 mid wickets. And the third is the bouncer. Those are the 3 plans. And that's pretty much what they do. But they do it so well now. And they do it so relentlessly. Like, it's no good 2 bowlers doing it and 2 bowlers being wayward. The fact is that all 4 of them do it. Not equally well, but all 4 of them are trying to do it. And that's an achievement.
True.
I mean,
Sorry.
you can see on the 5th day, right? You can see the difference in class of Jasprit Bumrah and the other 2 bowlers. The other 2 bowlers were also trying to hit the pad. They were also trying to pin the batsman on the pad by bowling straight, or get the batsman to hit a catch to mid wicket or something like that. And eventually they did, right? But Bumrah just has an extra yard of pace and that extra bit of control, where, these guys will drift on the pad like 3 times in 2 overs and Bumrah does it once in 2 overs. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, you could see that in the first session of last day, right? When play started, Umesh and Bumrah started.
Yeah.
Bumrah was so accurate that in the first 4 over spell, he gave like 3 or 4 runs. Umesh gave 14, and they used to have 3 slips, and then Umesh used to bowl at the pads of Rory Burns, who used to tuck it away for a single. I mean, he's not doing it purposefully, but he did that like 3 times in that spell, which was counterproductive to the plan that he was doing. But whereas you see in Bumrah, it was like all going to the script. So if you had 2 Bumrahs at either end, you would have gotten, I think, a wicket sooner.
And to wish for 2 Bumrahs is the heights of greed, I guess. He's such a rare phenomenon. What I was amazed by that spell is that, usually we are, the way Bumrah attacks is typically from a back of length, right? Which is also why he's got that extraordinary control. It's very rare for a fast bowler to attack from that sort of a length. I mean, you can think of Ambrose and you can think of McGrath, but they are like, in terms of the point of delivery, in terms of their height, everything was very, very different from Bumrah. Bumrah's point of delivery is particularly not even high. And to be able to, change it in such sort of swift way, so quickly between, one innings and another innings, just because the wicket is flat, just because that's the only way to get it out. And to change it so effectively as well. Like Karthikeya mentioned, he had such immense control, even when he was bowling full and at that searing pace. He's just, I mean, even if you think of Ambrose, for instance, who could attack from a back of a length. But I'm not sure if, let's say, Ambrose could bowl full so quickly and so effectively as Bumrah does here. I mean, it's still early days in Bumrah's career, but whatever we've seen of him so far points to the fact that this guy is a rare fast bowler.
He's still the second most attacking Indian bowler in this squad. I think Siraj goes the extra amount. I mean, he maxes his out. He's at volume 11 all the time. When Kohli tells him to attack, he's at 11 all the time. He gives away runs, but I was like super happy watching him bowl the 4th day evening when England were batting, 33 overs. He bowls 6 overs for 24. He goes for runs, but what supreme attacking bowling, man. He was like, he was not even giving it a moment's thought. He was bowling it straight. He was obviously conceding runs, third man and down the leg, but superb attacking bowling. I just loved it. It was not very helpful, but it makes for a great spectacle when Siraj attacks.
Agreed. No, but one Bumrah is a miracle. Ashoka wants 2. I can understand Ashoka's optimism. He's a believer in Lord Shardul, so he believes anything is possible. No, but one of the reasons why like Siraj has this license to attack now is because Jadeja gives so much control. So much control. Jadeja is a phenomenal spinner, and he's not he doesn't look phenomenal because his basic ball is really fast, for a spinner. So he doesn't he doesn't have the the artful, obvious drift and dip and all those things, but he can do those things when he wants to. But what he really does is like he never gives an inch to the batsman, and that's extraordinary. And it builds up. It's like he's bowled 20 overs for 35 runs before you know it. That's an extraordinary weapon for Kohli to have, because it lets him, it lets him, bowl Shami and Siraj and all these people and lets them chase wickets. Because, okay, fine, if they give 2 extra boundaries, it doesn't matter because Jadeja is saving them at the other end. Jadeja has bowled, given Kohli 120 overs at 2.2 an over in this series. And England have not had that luxury. Moeen's not been able to do that.
Yeah, and it was a big deal, right? If you see Jadeja, just the last 2 innings, Jadeja bowled 30 out of the 92 India bowled. And Moeen bowled 26 out of the 148 England bowled. So their fast bowlers were like nearly dead by the time, your Shardul, Umesh and Bumrah were batting. Of course, they hit cover drives. Of course, they whacked them all around. They were bowling 30th over, man. This was like that Gabba test where Australians were, Cummins and Hazelwood were bowling 30 overs in each innings.
Yeah.
That's there because they picked only 4 good bowlers and Cameron Green. But here, still, the same analogy holds. So, fast bowlers are bowling 50 overs a match. This is the 4th match of the series. So, it is going to hurt.
There are a couple of problems with that. I know, even for instance, when Shane Warne was talking about it on commentary, Nazir Hussain kind of made the same point saying, but these are spinners overs, because they don't have a good spinner. The spinners overs are being bowled by their faster bowlers, which is one point. But even otherwise, even if you look at not so long innings like Anderson's record in the second innings in recent years is not particularly impressive. So not only India had a better spinner, far better spinner, but India also had better fast bowlers in the second innings on a flattish wicket.
True. I think so. I think that's true. But I think England, they are really missing Stokes, because I think if Stokes was there, they would play Leach. And I think Leach would give them better control than Moeen does.
Yeah, that's true. So just going back to that Bumrah thing, the other point that Kartikeya has recently taken a fancy to is to call the bluff on this so-called setup. So if you look at what Bumrah was doing, it was obvious to anybody who was watching, and in fact it came out beautifully when Atherton talks about it, and immediately the Oli Pope bowled happens, and it seems like magical. But it was obvious to anybody who was watching, anybody who's seen Bumrah bowl that before, is that this is what he was going to do. So even if you assume setups exist, there's no harm in assuming it exists. But the setup in itself is not a big deal at all, because it's the execution which matters. So in many ways, you could, even though you could perfectly predict what he was going to do, the skill level of execution is at such a staggeringly high level that knowing that didn't matter at all. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is the skill level which makes everything possible. The only reason setups appear as setups is because they are executed so well. Otherwise, every bowler all the time is trying to bowl like 3 outswingers and then get a nip back LBW. But Anderson can do it. That's why it looks like a setup. But every bowler is trying it. Every batsman knows that every bowler is trying it. It's not like they know it's coming. They can't do anything about it. It's like Kumble. Kumble developed the googly before Australia in 2004. And he bowled it, and it was, and
you could spot it from long off.
Yeah, and they were saying, it seemed that the Australians were picking it. Some of them at least were picking it. Damien Martin and all them. When Kumble was asked about it, and Kumble said, "Yeah, of course they pick it, but they still have to play it." And that's true. If it's a well-pitched googly, it's still hard to play. Because even Kumble doesn't know how much it's going to turn. How will the batsman know how much it's going to turn? It's still pitched on a great length. It's still hard to play. It doesn't. There's not the problem with the whole setup thing is like it's like it's a trick. It's not a trick when everybody knows it. How can it be a trick? Who's be tricking whom? Nobody is tricking anybody. They know what's coming. They still can't do anything about it. That's so much harder than a trick. It's why Ajanta Mendes didn't take 500 test wickets, no? Because once people figured out what he was bowling from the hand, his control of length was no longer good enough to make him a sustainable test match bowler. He went for a lot of runs once people picked him. Mystery never survives in this level. Yeah.
Not so much mystery, but just the setup point. I think mystery point is widely understood now. But in terms of setup, for instance, there are 2 components to the setup, right? One, everybody knows it. Even the batsman knows it. It's about how he handles it. But in most occasions, they also handle it, right? It's not like Anderson bowls 3 outswingers and 1 in-swinger only when he gets a wicket. He does it all the time. And batsmen play it all the time as well.
Yeah. They do. I mean, they will. There's a setup every over. I mean, it's not like they're doing time pass for 5 overs and trying to get the guy out of the sixth, no?
But by the way, we skirted around that point and then we left it. And this seems
Player
to
of
be
the
typical
match,
of
no?
the. No, it's another topic which is never even spoken about. Recently, only it has risen its head. We reached that point where we were talking about Rahane, and then we just moved away. This Rahane's bad form is something that he has some secret charm. Whenever people talk about Rahane, it is like quickly forgotten, or it never reaches the decibel levels of Pujara or whoever.
What are you saying, man? Gavaskar thinks the opposite. He thinks, Pujara's name is bandied around just for company, but otherwise Rahane is the team's target. He's very clear.
On that related note, I think they are not paying Sunnyji properly this series, man. He's very grumpy. He's not only been critical of, he's been critical of everything. Like poor guy Hamid is batting, and he's he's been into cricket after a long time, international cricket. Sunnyji was going on saying this guy has only 33 average in domestic. See, this is the problem with England. I'm like, boss, the boys batting on 62, boss. They gave 100-run start. What do you expect that guy to do? Poor guy, it's a fifth day pitch. Great bowling attack. Of course he'll be tentative, but he made 60, no? Chill.
No, I don't know.
And that's what happens when two Mumbai batsmen bat well. All these Mumbai guys think it's like being Kadus is so easy. Everybody should be Kadus.
No, Gavaskar is like, I think he loves being patriotic. He loves performing the patriotism. And he likes to stick it to England, especially. It's like I suppose he's a creature of his generation. No, I mean that's.
Yeah, this tour he seems to be pretty. He has picked one fight with Nasser for no reason. I think Nasser Hussain himself was like.
I thought he was fully justified,
right.
Actually. Gavaskar was fully justified in saying that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, right or otherwise, he's in that mode. He's not letting things go. He's like, one life, I'm already at the end of it. I'm just going to go on a war path. No, screw everybody. But anyways, Rahane question. India promoted Jadeja, so already signs are there, is it?
I don't think they're going to drop him for the next test match.
Prepare for outrage.
Well, if they drop him, it's reasonable. If they don't drop him, also is reasonable. I mean, what?
What? You are the one who said he's better than Lakshman, man. What the hell?
Defend him. He's not playing well now, no?
It's one test match, one data point. But when you said it, it was true, right? But now you're backing away from.
No. It's still true, but he's still not playing well.
No, how is it still true? In fact, he wrote a piece in which he wrote one line saying, something, but Rahane is a better batter. And he goes on to say Lakshman had a longer career. He averaged far more. I'm like, you are making every point against the first point that you made. And the only point in favor of Rahane is he bats against bowlers with, under 28 average. And that too away from
against them. And he bats better against them. He scores better against them.
But what about the fact that he bats far worse against lesser bowlers? It's like, it's
but
like...
he plays them less. He gets to play them less often. And he is weird. He is a weird player, in that he... Like when South Africa were in India, like you think about it like this, right? If you see like any great Indian batsman from the 90s, like Azharuddin, Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, Vinod Kambli, whoever, anybody who's like rated in that level, whether they eventually made it or not, right? And you see them like playing Donald and Pollock like really well, and then getting out to Klusner or Simcox or something like that. Rahane is that player. Rahane, when South Africa come here with like Rabada and Steyn and all, he will play them perfectly well. And then Keshav Maharaj will give him his wicket like 3 times or something like that. He's a really weird player. And I will say one thing, that one pattern which emerges in Rahane's career is that he's exceptional against pace, but he struggles against seam and swing. I mean, the 3 bowlers who have troubled him the most are Anderson, Broad, and Saudi. So he's definitely had his problems against seam bowling. In that he's a lot like Sehwag. but he's outstanding against like extreme pace. Like you look at his record against like Cummins, Rabada, Mitchell Johnson, Mitchell Stark, Shannon Gabriel, all these guys is phenomenal. And surprisingly, he has an amazing record against Renkana Herath also. Even there, he will play Herath beautifully, and then he'll get out to that their second or third spinner. He's a really It's like he's if you imagine a player who makes you tear your hair out because he frustrates, he gets out in frustration. Rahane is that player. He has always been that player.
No, that's true, but I understand your logic about he plays, let's say, great bowling better or particularly fast bowling better. All that is fine, but even in an era like this where the percentage of balls that some of these batsmen have played of 128 average bowlers is much higher than, let's say, the previous decade. But it's still not majority of the balls that they face. The majority of the balls that they face is from the other bowlers, right? It's what for Rahane it's what 30% right? It's still not more than 50%. So for majority of the balls, you are actually not great, and admittedly lesser threatening bowling.
Yeah, but it's also easier to survive. Let's say you're facing. I mean, what was the statistic? I forget. They're facing like in 2002 in England, India faced like one ball from a bowler average better than 28 for 6 balls from other bowlers. So it's much easier to survive 1/6 of balls of that quality than it is to survive 1/3 of the balls of that quality. Because as the number of balls increases, the probability of you getting dismissed increases in a more than linear fashion against.
No, that is a good argument. That is a good argument if I tell you Rahane's average against under 28 average bowlers is poor because he plays a lot higher percentage of them. No, in fact, that part he takes care of pretty well despite playing more balls against them, he takes care of that pretty well.
Which suggests to me that he's a better batsman. He's not a better run scorer. Those are different things.
Come on, this is like saying, he scores 100 in math, but he just fails in whatever Hindi. That's not.
Yeah, he's shit at Hindi. That's actually a very good analogy.
Actually, I'll tell you then what we are saying, or what I will not include myself because this is all I'm dumping it on Kartikeya.
I am not saying any of it.
Yeah, I'm dumping it on Kartikeya. So Kartikeya is saying Rahane scores when it matters. So scoring when it matters is actually a thing, is what you're saying. So you're going back.
Rahane is even worse than that, actually. Rahane is pointlessly good against really good bowling because he eventually throws it away against the false bowling.
So it doesn't matter, no? When he throws away,
in fact,
it doesn't matter.
Opposite. He's saying the corollary. He's saying he doesn't score when it matters. He scores when it doesn't matter of really good bowling.
Yeah, he should be like milking all these weaker bowlers. He would average like 2,000 or something.
Milking weaker bowlers is things when it doesn't matter, man. When things are like easy, then so he scores the tough runs that exists today. So your analysis has finally led to a myth being real, which is what we were always saying.
That's not actually a bad point to put here because there is some evidence to suggest that both Rahane and Kohli do score a lot of runs. Like they have made a lot of hundreds where they are the only player in the team to make 100. Whereas Pujara tends to make hundreds in conditions where someone else is also going to make 100. Someone is also going to make big runs.
I so wish you were saying Rohit, man. You said Pujara, shit. Okay, anyways, go ahead.
Oh, Corner will throw me out, man. I mean,
no, it doesn't matter whether he scores it with somebody else or scores it alone. The simple
he scores it before them because he opens the batting.
The simple fact of the matter, yeah, exactly. So yeah, and then he scores it faster than the other opener anyway. But the simple fact of the matter is when he makes 100, India doesn't lose. In fact, India goes on to win every time he makes it. And this is becoming a bit of a trend.
Then you can also say Shardul. Every time Shardul is in the squad, in the 11, India wins. So that is also becoming a trend. It's just 4 test matches. This guy's made only 800s, man. So how is that a trend?
8 is still twice a 4.
Speaking of tough assignments, Shardul Thakur's 4 test matches, after that, let's not count that first one where he got injured. Like, let's not count it, okay? Shardul Thakur's 3 test matches have been against Australia at Brisbane and then 2 against England. And India have won all of them, no? No, India
No.
didn't won.
Yeah, 2-1 and 1 draw. So still not bad.
Undefeated. And Shardul Thakur has taken his wickets at 22 and he has scored his runs at 32 in those.
32, in those, but 38 overall. I think 38 is his average now because of this 60.
He's got like tough assignments and he's like bossed all of them so far.
So basically, he's not only Lord, he's Clutch Lord.
Yeah,
he is Lord Clutch. And he's like, he should be the poster child of all these management fairy types, scores when it matters.
No. He doesn't score when it matters. It matters when he scores. At some point, people are going
Ashoka,
to.
I must congratulate Ashoka here because he has successfully diverted the conversation from where it was inevitably heading to.
We have also diverted away from Rahane also. That is another thing.
Delayed the inevitable. But Rahane, look, I think that if they thought that they had an obvious replacement, they would have dropped him by now. But the fact that they are not dropping him suggests that they don't think they have an obvious replacement. That's what I think anyway.
No, I mean, I'm absolutely okay with them playing him, let's say for one more test. But this whole thing about Rahane scores tough runs or scores in harder conditions, which was always used against to some extent Pujara, for instance, when his home record was heavily skewed. And of course, the name that you guys don't want to listen to, Rohit as well. That every time he scored runs at home, like even when the home series was happening, he's like, but his away record is so poor, we should drop him for away test. Now, why can't we apply the same logic for Rahane? Even if you want to play him away, his home record is so mediocre. I mean, there you cannot make an argument. You cannot say there is no obvious replacement. There are plenty over there, and it's like a legitimately earned place somehow that if you score runs abroad, the home tests are fine, like you can just cruise through them without scoring. Like home runs are so taken for granted. I mean, sure, Pujara scores a lot of them, Rohit scores a lot of them, but if it is so easy, why can't Rahane score?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I don't think Rahane has a particularly strong case for staying a test batsman right now. But he's vice captain and they seem to like him, and there is something to be said for having a guy who's played 70 odd tests. But I mean, I don't think it's a convincing case by a long distance. I mean, and especially since he doesn't seem to be playing better, and he doesn't seem to do well in England anyway. So, I mean, he's much happier on hard wickets, in South Africa, Australia. He's much happier over there than he is in England anyway. So, I really don't understand why, why they're persisting with him. For some reason they are. So I suppose, I mean, they know something we don't. Let's put him out of his misery. Okay, Cornered. The floor is yours. Begin, Rohit Sharma Puran.
I've been fan for such a long time when he scored the 100. And this is not even his first 100. And I got a lot of congratulatory messages on Twitter. And for some reason, it felt deeply personal for me as well. And like, for instance, when he was on the verge of scoring the 100, and I think when he was an 80 or whatever, when he scored a couple of sweeps, right? And he was accelerating and going for the 100. In my mind, I was thinking, it's been such a chancy innings. He was dropped twice. Even when he started on the previous evening, he was looking quite shaky. In terms of his 50s in this series, it's probably his least impressive 50, so to say. And I was thinking, like in my mind, I was thinking, the 100 doesn't matter. It's some arbitrary figure. I've seen him play better innings in Sri Lanka, better innings in Australia. And his Lord's 83 is perhaps his best innings outside of India. And in India, I've seen him play the 161 at Chennai is a far superior innings and so on. But having said all that, when the final moment came, especially with that 6, it was a massive relief. It was a relief for everybody. Like everybody was talking about it. Even like I thought Rohit will come out and say, it didn't matter. It was always going to come. Even he was relieved when he was interviewed at the end of the match. I think Atherton asked him about it. He said, this is the best because it's my first 100 away from home. And he can, you can clearly see that it was weighing on him. So all that thought that it doesn't matter and whatever, even for me, like as a fan, it mattered a lot. So it was such a massive sort of relief. Not so much that I ever had any doubt that he'll go on to do it, but the fact that it finally came was a massive relief, and it felt deeply personal. I mean, like if people didn't know the history of how long I've been chasing for Rohit Sharma, it might have seemed ridiculous that people are congratulating
14
him.
years, no? 2007 or 2008. When was
2008, actually. In fact, the first time I heard of Rohit Sharma was when I think he was the first one to score 100 in Syed Mushtaq Ali tournament, if I'm not wrong, in the inaugural edition.
Hey, he was there in the 2007 World T20, man. He hits a 6
he was there in the World T20, but before that, the first time I heard was this. I had seen him in the World T20 and like that, but I don't think I was a big fan like immediately. It was, and then he played the Ranji Trophy final where he scored 200s. And then he plays a first-class game against Australia, both President's 11, when there was Peter Siddle and Stuart Clark. And it was a really fine bowling attack. If I'm not wrong, Mitchell Johnson was also there. And he scores 100 at Upal, both him and Kohli. I think both of them score 105, equal sort of score. And Kohli, 105 was, not so impressive, but Rohit looked like ready to play Test cricket the next day. He was so impressive, so tight, and his stroke making was brilliant. And I thought he was ready, right? And then 2010, he was supposed to play the Nagpur Test because Lakshman was injured, Dravid was injured, and then he injures himself on the morning of the match. And since then, it's been a torturous journey. And finally, the 2013 happened, and the 200s happened. And I don't know where it went. And unfortunately for me, that was also the time when I was losing interest in one-day cricket. I don't know why. I couldn't make sense of that inflation, and I also didn't want to invest so much time in something that I wouldn't be, looking back after 10 years with too much fondness. For all I might not even remember. So I stopped taking one-day cricket seriously. In fact, stopped watching most of it. So majority of the legendary career of Rohit Sharma in one-day cricket, I've not even watched. So I was this really weird Rohit Sharma fan who was only interested in his Test career, which was simply not happening,
This is the one thing I don't understand with Rohit this series, right? And that's not with Rohit. It's with the English bowlers. If India, with one data point of the WTC final, can keep Ashwin out for 4 tests, they had one data point. Now, Rohit, match after match, is giving you a data point that if you bowl short to him, there is a likelihood of wickets. Just bowl short to him, man.
Yeah.
Keep bowling short. I mean, he will hook you for like 4 sixes or 5 sixes. You'll have 2-3 no balls, but okay, fine. You'll get the guy out cheap. Yeah. And these days are letting him make 300-400 runs.
I'm going to apply KD's logic of efficient markets here. That if you thought it was so simple, wouldn't England have already done it? It's not. It's not. There is always the fear of being tonked around the ground for quick runs. It doesn't. There's a risk reward for them as well to pursue that. In your vision, you might see it as an obvious.
You can't in one breath say that English bowlers have been by and large good, barring this Test match where they didn't find any help. And in other breath say that it's tough to bowl all that. I mean, it's tough, of course. That's why I am not bowling it.
I'm not saying they can't bowl to a plan. My point is the plan is risky.
How much risk can it be? I mean, he's not going to hit you
the ball will get damaged. No, they have to bowl seam up at all the other bowlers. The first 2 overs of India's second innings, with Rohit Sharma on strike, was like a casino, man, in this Test match. It was pure fluke that he survived.
No, I wouldn't deny that. It was a very shaky innings. And, if you had asked me, after, let's say, 30 minutes of his batting in any of those innings, I would have picked this as the least likely for him to go on to score 100. But to be fair to him, the next morning when he came back, he was a lot tighter, a lot more organized. But even then, he was a little
flat,
fortunate.
Man, and the ball was old.
It was. I mean, the previous inning was also the ball was. The wicket was flat. The ball was not old. Fair enough. But even then, he was a little fortunate. I think it's just. Given how well he's played right through the series and to some extent even in Australia, he's. I know you hate this.
Katie, give it to him, man. The guy is 33. Ajay Ratra has an overseas 100. Let him have it, no? At this point, we are saying let him have it.
Ajit Agarkar has an overseas 100, man.
Yeah.
Lots, no less.
Yeah. So, what is the big deal, Rohit Sharma getting one?
No, the other thing that I wanted to outrage about is somewhere earlier in the conversation, Karthikeya mentioned about the depth of this team. And he said there's nobody in this team who's irreplaceable. I mean, you can say that about Kohli, certainly about Rahane. But how can you say that about Rohit?
Why? You have Mayank Agarwal, you have Shubman Gill, you have so many people.
And you have me and you
Shaw,
also, but we are not
KL
equals.
Of course they are equal.
Like, who's going to average 75 at home? Like, Rahane averages half of that,
Yeah, pretty much anybody. Firstly, we don't need to average 75 at home. Because Ashwin and Jadeja...
No need to is not a point, right? Then you don't need Jadeja also. Akshar Patel proved it. You don't need Jadeja also. But that's not the point.
Yeah, this is what I mean. No, nobody is irreplaceable. There is no... You can make arguments that there are 7 or 8 first names on the team sheet. And some of those arguments might be a little bit like, faith-based. Like, you say Shardul Thakur is the first name on the team sheet. But, there are a lot of other, reasonable first names on the team sheet. Jadeja would be a first name on the team sheet if you ask me. Ashwin would be a first name on the team sheet. Kohli would be a first name on the team sheet. Rohit Sharma would be a first name on the team sheet. Rishabh Pant would be a first name on the team sheet. Jasprit Bumrah would be a first name on the team sheet. There are so many. Ishant Sharma arguably was essential in India winning at Lords.
There are only 3 replaceable names in this. One of them whom is already replaced, which is Ashwin. And then you have Bumrah. And then there's Rohit. That's it.
Rohit Sharma easily replaceable, man.
Yeah, he's the most replaceable guy in the history of Indian cricket.
Outside of Bradley, nobody has averaged so much at home.
He has been the most replaced guy in Indian cricket.
Yeah. That's not even conjecture. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, he has been the most replaced guy in the last 7 or 8 years.
No, he was replaced even before he made his debut. So the other day I tweeted also, between 2010 when he was supposed to have made his debut and when he eventually made his debut in 2013, there were some 16 or I don't know, 16 names who made their debut, I guess, or 16 is probably an exaggeration, but Kohli, Dhawan, quite a lot of players, Rahane, had it happened to Pujara, for instance, where he had to wait 3 years for his actual debut, my God, all your Test cricket Brahmins would have gone to town with it. Okay, I think we've reached the absolute pits here. We have nothing more to talk about this Test match.
Do you want to talk about the final day? Where Karthikeya was tweeting consistently that England are likely to win. And it consistently didn't keep happening.
So even in my post-match, I wrote a little note after the match for the Substack. And even in that, I said, on another day, they might not have won.
No, that is true. I agree with that. And in fact, on majority of occasions, they may not have won, right? I mean, let's say on a flat wicket like this, perhaps 7 out of 10 times, they may not have won. But having said that, I completely agree with the fact that, I was of this similar view as well, but not in terms of England win, but more I thought draw was the most likely result because
I thought draw, Indian win, and England win were the order of probabilities. Even
as flat as it was still not the easiest of wickets to score runs on.
Yeah, but India killed the game expertly.
Yeah, in the first session, not even in the second session. Second session results came, but the first session finished the match, I thought.
Yeah, they were magnificent. It's not the one thing that should be said is that, we always remember teams, by remembering the extraordinary things that their best players do, but good teams are teams where you look at what their weakest players are doing, and that's also really good, and India just accumulated excellent overs, excellent over after excellent over after excellent over on a pitch where there was really absolutely nothing happening for them. And, that is what appears to us as pressure and intensity. It is just relentless quality, which appears as people always say it in the other direction. They say, well, there is intensity and so there is quality. It's not like that. It's there is quality and so it seems to be intensity. It's the batsman is not able to free his arms and blast a cover drive every over or every other over. Then you can't have intensity if that happens. No matter how much your captain is screaming and whatnot. But when you have such control of the game that you know where the ball is being hit, where you force the batsman to take a chance to score a boundary, a big chance that too, and Siraj dropped the catch, but that was basically Hasib Hamid not knowing where his next run is going to come from, and that is intensity. It's not like it's not body language or anything like that. It's just relentless line and length. Once the ball got old, basically they stopped like playing. The slips were no longer in play. So what they did is they moved the line straighter so they could attack the stumps, and they added like a leg trap in with like 2 mid wickets or 1 mid wicket and a square leg and a mid on and 2-man back for the ball which drifts onto the pad. That's why you constantly saw Siraj pushing the fine leg finer and finer. But to do that you have to have control of length, because if you keep over pitching and pitching short when you're bowling straight, you're going to go for a lot of runs. But they didn't. They bowled a good length. Actually, what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Adelaide in 2003 in the 4th innings. But the difference was that Australia had Andy Bickle and Steve Waugh to bowl that straight line and try to strangle the batsman. And they're not as good as Jasprit Bumrah and these guys. So that was, I think, and they didn't have any more bowlers, right? I mean, they had Simon Katich, who was not really very useful, and they had Stuart McGill, who's not a restrictive bowler in the Jadeja way. So they had Australia just didn't have the weaponry to bowl that line and make that line of attack successful and Adelaide was, if anything, wearing more than this wicket. This was still not breaking up at all. It was fairly firm, So, but this was a very, very flat pitch, and they basically I think the par outcome on this 5th day is that Bumrah doesn't always get those breakthroughs, but England hold on for a draw.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. But I don't think the par outcome in any sort of situation would have been an England win.
That depends on how the bowling side bowls on that wicket. I mean, if they don't have the means to shut the game down like India did, and Australia didn't have that means to shut the game down in Adelaide in 2003, and then India won. So if India didn't have the bowling that they have, I think England could well have won. England did make 390 and 430 against arguably better bowlers from the Indian squad in the last 2 test matches. So it's not like they haven't made runs in this series.
Fair enough. I think we've covered good ground. Yeah. With that, we come to the end of our review of the Oval Test. We will come back in time for the next test. Thanks a lot for listening. Thanks a lot for all your support over the years. You can, if you like us, please review and rate us in all the podcasting platforms that you use. You can also support us in our crowdsourcing page at coffee.com, ko-fi.com/81allout. A lot of people have donated generously in the past, some through one-time contributions and some through subscriptions. We are extremely grateful for all the support we've got and for all the listenership that we've got and for all the feedback that we keep getting. Thanks. Keep them coming.
India win. He'll come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for 2. India home. Lords goes wild.